How's it going, everybody? And welcome to the College Football Podcast with your host, Alec Pecano, and co host, Bradley Walker. We are part of the NGSC Sports Network. You know the website, ngscsports.com. On tonight's show, we are going to go over our top three. We're going to basically wrap up the college football season for 2024. A lot of fun stuff planned for tonight. And at the end of the show, we will be announcing where we are going in 2026. But let's get started right now with our top three moments of the season from the 2024 college football season. And with all these, we're going to alternate. Like, you'll give your number three, I'll give my number three.
Okay.
So I will let you give your number three first.
My number three is Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame, because up till that point, that was the only loss they had until the national championship game, in which they lost to Ohio State. But that was one of the biggest upsets of the college football year. Early on was that one, so that one would be my number three moment.
My number three moment, and I'm sorry to pick on Bama. I think Bradley knows where I'm going with this, even though I didn't tell him what my three moments were. My number three is when Alabama got upset by Vanderbilt. And I will be the first to admit, when we did our picks that week, neither of us picked Vanderbilt. We both picked Alabama.
In a blowout, I think we both had them steamrolling Vanderbilt. So,
Alabama fans, here's our apology. We're sorry. I mean, no, Vanderbilt fans, here's our apology for that.
Yeah. Yep.
We are sorry. We should have picked you against Alabama. Just like we should have picked Arkansas against, I'm sorry, Tennessee fans, just like we should have picked Arkansas against Tennessee.
Yeah, true. That's true.
What is your number two?
Number two is the Ohio State-Michigan flag planting fiasco. I know that's not a top moment, but here's why I picked that, guys, is I think it's going to change that rule moving forward in college football. I think the NCAA should outlaw that because, again, it ruins good football games. And we saw last year with Michigan and Ohio State, Florida State, and I think there was another incident.
North Carolina State.
There you go. So,
and it also happened with Arizona State, but it wasn't midfield. It was in the end zone.
So I think that's going to come to a stop. And that's the reason why I picked it. Again, that's not really a top moment, but I think it's a possibly rule-changing moment for NCAA football moving forward. So that's why I picked this as my number two.
My number two, and you should know where I'm going with this, since I'm an Ohio State fan. My number two is big number 33 in Ohio State, Jack Sawyer, strip sack against his old roommate, which many people, including me, didn't know they were actually roommates, when Quinn Ewers was at Ohio State. Yes, that's an interesting, I'm not going to say stat, but that's an interesting snippet from what I learned from Ohio State, Texas, is that Ewers and Sawyer were roommates. And that is my number two moment. Jack Sawyer strip sack for the game-sealing touchdown against Texas.
Okay. And my number one is one that you picked as your number three. I had Alabama being upset by Vandy as my number one. Being that I'm an SEC guy, we don't expect the top teams in the conference to lose. And again, I'm not saying that Vanderbilt is not a top school, but compared to football, they're not one of those that everyone picks at the beginning of the season to win it. They never won an SEC championship. I don't know. I'm not going to say that it never will happen, but right now I don't see it happening anytime soon because Alabama and Georgia and Tennessee and Texas and Oklahoma will have something to say about that moving forward. But that was my number one. And I think a lot of people in the SEC and actually around the college football world were kind of happy to see Alabama get knocked off the mountain by in superior, a team that's not up to their level. So yeah.
Yeah. My number one, it's an interesting one. It doesn't have to do with the team. It has to do with an entire conference that was a mess the entire season. And I think we went over it a couple times during the season. The good old Big 12. All the lovely chaos. And I have a couple apologies to make for the Big 12. Colorado fans, I'm sorry I wasn't very high on you this year. Same with BYU. But now, shall we get to our 2024 awards? And again, like I said a minute ago, we're going to alternate. So, Bradley, give me your Heisman Trophy winner. No, it's Coach of the Year. Coach of the Year first.
Coach of the Year first?
Yeah, and then it's Heisman.
Kurt Signetti. I mean, come on. Indiana wasn't supposed to do anything this year. And they were, when they went to the Ohio State game, they were on a roll. They were undefeated. They hadn't lost a game. And that would be my pick. Or that, I don't know. Did he win Coach of the Year, or did the guy from Arizona State win it?
I think Signetti won it.
Okay.
And again, y'all can put your opinions down in the comment section. We enjoy hearing y'all's thoughts, because I know we're going to get some slack for who we pick. But my Coach of the Year is Rhett Lashley from SMU.
Okay.
Now, and here's this was the toughest award I had a choice pick, that I had a difficult time picking, because you had Rhett Lashley, you had Signetti, you had the coach for Buffalo, which I don't remember his name. And there were some other guys in there too. But I went with Rhett Lashley because SMU, this was their first year in a real conference. And I felt like SMU was another team I was kind of low on this year going into the season. And to say, oh, they're going to win more than six or seven games, I didn't see it. And obviously, Rhett Lashley probably secretly has a burner account that watches the show. And it got out to him and he showed his players, oh, these two guys that do a podcast are talking about how we're not going to win more than 6 games this year. Let's go out and prove them wrong. And congratulations to Rhett Lashley's burner account. You've got my attention. You are my Coach of the Year. Now we go to the Heisman.
Travis Hunter. I mean, the guy played both sides of the ball. And I hope that he ends up, I don't know where he's going to go in the draft in a couple months, but I have Travis Hunter.
I have Ashton Genty. The only reason I went with Genty and not Hunter is snaps don't count as a stat. And again, if you want to give your opinion in the comments, you're more than welcome to. But Ashton Genty had one of the best seasons a running back's ever had in college football. And to tell me he's not going to win the Heisman, because I have somebody else that was the best running back, I'm going to let you know that right now. Now we get to the best defensive player. And I think we might agree on this one.
Go ahead.
I'll let you go first.
Best defensive player. Oh, my Lord. I picked Travis Hunter.
So did I. So there's an award we actually agree on.
Yeah, that's who I have. Yep.
Best offensive player. And we might be on different sides of the scale on this one.
I picked Genty. That's who I had as my offensive player of the year.
No, best offensive player. Not, it could be like what, it doesn't have to specifically be I said Jeremiah Smith because he had the
Okay.
best season a freshman ever had.
Right.
So your best offensive player was Genty.
Yes.
Okay, now we get to most improved team, and I will take the honors here going first. I went with Buffalo. 2023, they went 3-9. 2024, they were the biggest surprise in the MAC, going 9-4, which I don't think anybody, including either of us, saw that coming because of the way they played in 2023, which was just horrid. Who is your most improved team?
I already talked about the coach of the year, so I'm going to go Indiana. I have a buddy who's a big Hoosiers fan, and I think they're the most improved team. Now, the question is, can they be consistent? That's the question behind it. It's not a 1 year fluke. So we'll see how they do.
Or as Jeff Jarrett likes to say, a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, 1 hit wonder. Yeah.
To quote the guy that we will talk about next Tuesday on our wrestling podcast, Jeff Jarrett, one-hit wonder. We get to the best freshman.
I have three of them, Bud, but I gotta say Jeremiah Smith. You mentioned him, so I got to go with him. I had two other ones, but I'm gonna go with him.
I also went with Jeremiah Smith, and it's for the simple fact that look at his stats. No freshman at Ohio State has ever put up the stats that Jeremiah Smith put up this year. And that he wasn't even the number one wide receiver. Ibuka was.
Mm-hmm.
Wait till next year when he's the number one. And to all the defenses in the Big Ten that have to play him next year, and to Texas, I surely hope you don't put your DBs on an island against him. Now we get to the best wide receiver.
I'm gonna go, buddy, with Luther Burden III from Missouri.
Okay. I also went with an SEC guy. Former SMU wide receiver. Current NFL draft guy that was at Texas this year and helped them get really far in the playoff. Matthew Golden. I give him credit. He had some good catches against Ohio State, and I thought he was going to be the reason Ohio State lost to Texas. We get to the best running back.
I have him for my offensive player of the year. I don't know how you can't put him in that category when he almost broke Barry Sanders' record. I mean, I don't know how, but yeah. How he didn't win the Heisman is beyond me, but I know he was upset about that. So
Genty's your best running back and player of the year?
Uh-huh.
My best running back is also Ashton Genty because, like you just said, he almost broke Barry Sanders' record for the most rushing yards in a single season. And best cornerback. This one, I think, for both of us was probably pretty easy as to who it was.
Travis Hunter?
I had Travis Hunter as well. Moving right along to teams to watch for 2025. I have three.
Okay.
I'm going to start. And one of them we talked about when we did our way too early predictions for 2025 a couple months back. That's Michigan State. I like the trajectory that Jonathan Smith has Michigan State on. They went 5-7. I think it was 5-7 this year. Missed a bowl game. But Michigan State fans, nothing to be sad about. Jonathan Smith, look what he did in his first year at Oregon State. They didn't really do good. And then look at his record. His second through his like fourth or fifth year there, they kept winning. Their win total increased every year. So that's number one. Number two is Southern Miss, who poached Charles Huff, Mr. Scooter's. What was the Scooter's? I think it's Scooter's Biscuits when he was at Marshall. But Southern Miss, they poached Charles Huff away from Marshall, and I think I think Charles Huff is gonna pull a Kirk Signetti and turn Southern Miss around and make them one of the top teams in the Sun Belt. And then the last one is a team from our neck of the woods in the AAC. They have a new coach. They were awful the last 2 years. No, I'm not talking about Charlotte. No, I'm not talking about East Carolina.
Temple.
Nope. Which, hilariously, they didn't fire Stan Drayton. So I guess they didn't listen to us. But it's FAU.
The Owls.
I like their new coaching hire in Zach Kitley from Texas Tech. And I'm going to be doing a video later down the road next week on the best transfer portal classes. And just a heads up, FAU might be in there. I like what they've done in the portal. I like the staff that Kitley's put together at FAU. And I think FAU is going to, I'm not going to say they're going to be better than they were this year, but it might take Kitley 1 or 2 years to get his recruits in there and turn the program around.
Fair enough.
Who are your teams to watch for 2025?
I'm going to start, Bud, with Army. Now, they won the American last year. And I like to see them do it again this year. And again, their game against Navy was great. So I'm going to say Army. Number 2, I hate to be a homer, but I'm going to say the Florida Gators. I think Billy Napier and this is DJ Lagway, a chance for them to be there. And my last one, Texas. It's time for Arch Manning. It's time to get the era started. So those are my 3 teams to watch in 2025.
Okay. Now we go down to the middle segment of the show, and we start with our way too early head coach's hot seat. And I will go first. I've got 4 guys on here.
Okay.
Wait, no. Yeah, 4. 2 from the SEC, 1 from the ACC, and 1 from the Big 12. And I'll start with Scott Satterfield, who I vividly remember us talking about him at the beginning of the season this year and how he was on the hot seat. And
he's on my list too, buddy. So that's one of the guys I have too. So
yes. So and I'm sorry, Cincinnati fans. I think if y'all start 0-2, 0-3 this year, that Satterfield's going to be. See ya, bye. Here's your pink slip. Go find another job. Who's your first one?
I'm going to take Hugh Freeze from Auburn. I think he's in trouble. He's in trouble to start the year off.
I didn't think of Hugh Freeze.
Yeah.
So that's your first one. My second one, and we did talk about this guy a lot, Mike Norvell at Florida State.
Oh, that's one I didn't have on my list, but so that good call. Yeah.
I don't care when people say that, Florida State did a good job in the transfer portal. Huh. How did that work out last year for you?
1 or 2 wins.
Do we need to remind you of not everything's, as they say, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Just ask all the guys that transferred to Florida State last year.
Yep.
Like DJU, he's probably going to be flipping burgers now at Burger King because I highly doubt he gets drafted. So that's my number 2. Who is your number 2?
Sam Pittman at Arkansas.
Yeah, he's on my list too. He's my number 3. And I think we could both say at the same time that we agreed that how did he keep his job?
That's a good question. Well, they could say a lot about Billy Napier too, but I know the Gators had a good end of their year, but there's a lot of people that say he's on the hot seat too, even coming into the season. So we'll see.
That was my number 3. My last one, in Kentucky fans, this might make you upset. Mark Stoops. I think if Kentucky has another bad year, Mark Stoops is going to be out the door looking for a new job. And I wouldn't be surprised. Who's your last way too early head coach hot seat?
This one might hurt you, Bud, personally, but I'm going to take Brent Pry at Virginia Tech. I think that if they don't get off to a good start, he might get a pink slip early on in the season. Now, can he turn around? Of course, but he's one of those guys too that was on the watch list. So that's my guy, or my 4 that I had.
You know what? That hurts me a little bit, but I can understand why. Because, of course, everybody's going to pick Virginia Tech to be one of the top teams in the ACC. I mean, there's another coach we could throw on there, even though he started using the portal. I'm looking at Clemson, South Carolina.
Oh, yeah. True.
Sorry, Dabo. Your time may be coming up.
Yep, that's true.
Same with Dave Doran in North Carolina State.
Well, how about Brent Venables in Oklahoma?
Yeah. Don't doubt that. Next, we get to our way too early top 15. And I will let you start with your number 15 team.
Okay.
And you're way too early. And this is something we're going to start doing after every week next season.
Cool. I have the defending national champions as number 1 because it would be stupid not to put them at the top.
Well, we're starting from 15 and then working our way
up. Okay. So 15 would be SMU, the Mustangs.
Okay.
I'm going to take South Carolina.
Well, we're alternating. So you said 15 for you is SMU.
Mm-hmm.
15 for me is Texas Tech. They're another team that has hit the portal really hard. If you look at their portal class, they have done a lot in the portal. Even though they lost a guy we talked about earlier in the season in Micah Hudson, who transferred over to Texas A&M. So who is your number 14 team?
South Carolina, the Gamecocks.
My number 14 team is, and we just talked about their coach a second ago, Clemson. I'm sorry, Clemson fans. I'm still not buying that you're going to be at the top of the ACC, even though Dabo has decided to start dipping some money into the transfer portal. I still don't buy it. Now you tell me who your number 13 team is.
Oh, I hate to even bring this team up, and I think you know where I'm going with this one, but it's Tennessee.
Oh, no. We're on the same page then.
Yeah.
Tennessee's my number 13 too.
Yep.
And it's for the sole fact that I don't know if they can repeat what they did this year. They're losing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Number 12 for me is, and then I'll let you give your number 12. My number 12 is Penn State. And I've already seen people out there making way too early bold predictions that, Penn State's going to win the Big Ten. And the Big Ten's going to get 5 teams into the playoff. And I'll tell you who they think the 5 teams are going to be. They think it's going to be Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, Michigan, and Oregon. I'm like, one, Michigan's lucky if they finish in the top 2 of the Big Ten. And I just saw something today that the NCAA is going to come down soon with the punishment for Michigan because Sharon Moore was involved in the scandal. He deleted text messages from Connor Stallions. So, Michigan fans, I hope you're prepared for your punishment. And I do have room to talk as an Ohio State fan because we got punished for, it wasn't this, but we got punished for selling our championship rings from the Rose Bowl for tattoos. So, yes, nothing is as bad as this, but who is your number 12 team?
The Florida Gators. DJ Lagway. They're going to be better. I think they got some people in the transfer portal. I think this is a make or break for Billy Napier. If they struggle, then their schedule won't be as hard as it was last year. They had a nightmare schedule there in the second half. And Tennessee's not as strong as they were a year ago, which I think they play Tennessee, I think, the week before they play Florida State. It's near the end of the season that they play Tennessee, which usually they play them at the start. So this year, the Gators play Tennessee near the end. I'm going to take the Florida Gators for my number 12.
My number 11 is Indiana. Indiana fans, I was wrong. I said under Kirk Cignetti, your first year, you'd go 7-5. Well, boy, I look like a fool. And I'm not willing to play that game again. You are my number 11 team in my way too early top 15.
I have Kansas State at that spot.
Oh, I didn't even think about Kansas State.
Yep, I got Kansas State at that spot.
My number, go ahead.
No, that's fine, but no, that's who I have.
My number 10, and I know this is going to ruffle some feathers in the SEC. My number 10 is Georgia. Lost Carson Beck to Miami, which is just hilarious because that's where his girlfriend goes to school. I don't know that I trust Gunnar Stockton a lot. And seeing as a guy we talked about before week 1 of the season last year, Jaden Rashada, has put his name back in the transfer portal.
I have Indiana. I have Indiana at this spot at 10. You had them one spot low, but I have Indiana. I think Cignetti and company will be in the top 10 this year. I agree with the you said earlier with the 5 in the Big Ten. I think they'll be one of the top 5 teams in the Big Ten this year. So yeah, that's where I have Indiana.
Here's another one that's gonna pull people the wrong way. At number 9, I have the Crimson Tide of Alabama.
So do I, bud. You agree on that one? I have Alabama too. That's right. I got Bama too. Yep.
The only thing I'm going to say is I don't think Kalen DeBoer is on the hot seat. I've already seen people saying that he's on the hot seat. No.
After 1 year?
What did Saban do in his first year at Bama?
Not very good.
And look what happened with him. They didn't fire him. He wasn't on the hot seat. My number 8 team, and you could probably say I'm a little bit of a homer because I went and saw them play last year. The Hokies of Virginia Tech. Kyron Drones is coming back. Fully healthy, it seems like, from all reports. Brett Pry, another year under his belt as a head coach. ACC, look out. I think Virginia Tech might win the ACC this year.
I have Arizona State at this spot.
My number 7 is Arizona State. Kenny Dillingham completely proved me wrong. They're another team I had winning 3 games this year, and
Bunch of shit.
they blew past that. So that is my number 7.
I have another state team. I have Iowa State at 7.
Okay. My number 6 is Ole Miss.
Okay.
Ole Miss is another team that hit the portal hard. They did lose a couple guys in the transfer portal, but they also reloaded in the portal, which who's their coach? Good old
Lane Kiffin.
he knows how to
He does. He does.
he knows how to dish out money. Who is your number 6?
I have LSU. I do. I have LSU at this spot.
Make or break year for Brian Kelly.
Correct.
My number 5 is a team you talked about earlier, SMU. And I gave Brett Lashley Coach of the Year. I think if SMU, and I believe Kevin Jennings is coming back, or is he gone?
I'm not sure, but I'm not sure.
Because I saw something with, I was looking up guys in the draft, and his name was in there, but I thought he was only a sophomore. So if that's the case, SMU may not have a quarterback, but we'll see. I think they could still finish in the top 5. Who is your number 5?
Penn State. I hate to say that, but Penn State. They got a lot of people coming back, so that's why I have.
And they stole
the defensive coordinator,
Jim Knowles. But I'm not mad at that because apparently the reason he took the defense coordinator job at Penn State was there was 2 big reasons. One, he's a Pennsylvania native. And to go along with that, more money, $3.1 million to be the defense coordinator. And apparently he had a gripe with Ryan Day and some of the defensive coaches.
Gotcha.
My number 4 is the runners-up in the national championship, Notre Dame.
Okay.
And the only reason I don't have them inside the top 3 is because they do have a new quarterback, and Steve and Jelly. I believe that is how you say his name. Notre Dame fans, if I said that wrong, I greatly apologize. And then they also have Chris Ash as their new defensive coordinator because they lost their defensive coordinator to, I want to say, the NFL.
Could have been.
No, he took another job in college to be a defensive coordinator somewhere else. Who is your number 4 team?
Georgia. Kirby Smart has a way of rebuilding. I know they lost Carson Beck, but for some off-the-wall reason, I know he'll get some.
Well, they also lost Jaden Rashada. But
they'll find a way. He's that type of coach that always – he's like Nick Saban. You thought, oh, he lost all these players in the NFL. Oh, they still win. So until they fall apart, I'm taking Georgia.
My number 3 is Oregon. I understand they're losing Dylan Gabriel, but Dante Moore is a heck of a good quarterback to have behind Dylan Gabriel. And I think Dan Lanning, if it's not Ohio State that wins the national championship next year, it's going to be Oregon. Because they're putting the same narrative around Dan Lanning that they put around Ryan Day the last couple of years. Oh, Ryan Day can't win a national championship. He's never going to. Now that narrative's been bestowed upon Dan Lanning. So within the next 2 years, I think Oregon will win a natty. Who is your number 3?
The runner-up, Notre Dame, is my number 3.
My number 2 is Texas. And yes,
Me too. I got Texas at number 2 too. Yep.
Arch Manning is the answer. Sorry, Quinn Ewers.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I'm going to say this because I know I dog on Quinn Ewers a lot, but to be positive and look at it in a positive light, Quinn Ewers probably should have came back to college for one more year to improve his draft stock. Because he might, there's an outside chance he might still be the number 2 or number 3 quarterback off the board behind Milroe and Shedeur Sanders, which I don't really think Jalen Milroe is a first-round quarterback, but who am I to say? I'm not a GM of a NFL team. Now, if I was, that'd be a different story, but I'm not. Who is your? Oh, you already said who your number 2 is. Texas. My number 1 is obviously the team that won the national championship, Ohio State.
Same here.
Yes, and I understand they lost. They lost a lot of their senior leadership on defense. They lost Will Howard. They lost Quinshon Judkins. They lost Emeka Ibuka. They lost Travion Henderson. They lost Josh Fryer. They lost Donovan Jackson. They lost Seth McLaughlin. I understand that, but I still think it's Ryan Day. They don't rebuild. They reload. Just like Alabama, just like Oregon, just like Texas. Ohio State has all the money, all the NIL money in the world. And it's that simple. Now we get to our way too early
quarterbacks.
Yes, way too early quarterbacks to watch. And I will let you have the honors of telling me who your number 3 quarterback gets to watch.
Okay, no, I got 5, but I'll narrow it down to 3. I'm going to start with Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly. His last name.
You
correctly.
are.
He'll be my number 3. Again, make or break year for Brian Kelly and LSU, so he's going to be that cog in whether the Tigers win the SEC or they fall apart. So, yeah.
My number 3 is a guy you got to see a lot of because you write for this team. It is Byron Brown from South Florida. And have you heard any reports on him transferring at all?
So last year, but I thought that had happened. I actually contacted the guy that is head of the credential department for the athletic department for football. And I asked him directly, I said, hey, we haven't seen Byron. I guess he did play in the Hawaii Bowl. He did play one play to give Bryce Archie a break. So he did play. But no, I haven't heard anything about him transferring. He was at the basketball game the other night. So I don't think he's transferring. I think the injury that he sustained was a lot more serious than the university let on. I think it was much more of a bigger break than it was initially reported. So that's what I've heard. But he told me, he goes, don't believe the rumors. He's in full practice. I said, okay. So we'll see come spring in a couple months in April when they have their spring game. If he's there, if he's still there, then yes, I'll see him there.
My question is, who's the backup this year? Because I think Archie is gone.
I don't know. And we lost another quarterback to the portal too, so I'm not sure who the backup.
Israel Carter.
Yeah, I think
was the one
that left. Yeah, he left. Well, I think because he knew he wasn't going to get any playing time, so he must be that low on the depth chart to know that he wasn't going to be. So yeah.
So Byron Brown is coming, as far as we know, ladies and gentlemen. Right now,
as far as we know,
Byron Brown
breaks. I'll let you guys know, but as far as I know right now, he is going to be back as a pool in his junior year. I think this is Byron's junior year at
It is.
USF.
Okay, so who's your number 2?
Number 2, Fernando Mendoza of Indiana. Again,
Oh man.
this is one of those,
I forgot about him.
And we're talking about Jeff Jarrett, who will go into more context on Tuesday. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Mendoza from Indiana.
My number 2 is a guy in the SEC that you probably know pretty well. He was the starter at South Carolina last year. Lenore Sellers. I think and we throw this word around loosely. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think he's going to have a breakout season for South Carolina. And again, I say that very loosely because we could come back and look at this before the season starts or at the end of the 2025 season. And I could either look like a complete genius, or I could look like a complete fool.
True. Well, hey, I picked Missouri to go to the playoff last year, so there you go. There you go, right there. So
Who is your number 1 quarterback to watch?
DJ Lagway. Again, the Gators, they finally hopefully found their quarterback. If you kind of think about it, they really haven't had a quarterback since Tebow. I mean, you can go back and say that. They have not really had a quarterback since Tim Tebow, and Tebow's been gone for a long time. And Lagway, I mean, Anthony Richardson, yeah, you could throw him and you could say that he's in the pros now, but I think Lagway is the reason why Billy Napier didn't lose his job. Hands down, that's one of the reasons why he didn't lose his job.
My number 1 quarterback to watch for 2025, and you could call me a homer, Julian Sayin at Ohio State. And I understand people wanted Ohio State to go in the portal and get a quarterback, but I think Ryan Day believes, to quote Joe Hendry, I think Ohio State believes in Julian Sayin. And now we get to the final segment of the show. And we are going to start with our teams that are going to, we believe in 2025, lay an egg or underachieve and be disappointing.
I've got 3, and actually my teams are both disappoint and overachieve. I guess that's kind of the same token or whatever you want to say, but I do have 3. You want to go back and forth, or do you want me to just give you my 3 off the top?
I'll go with my number 3, which is to disappoint. My number 3 is Maryland. Mike Locksley somehow kept his job, and I understand that they did a lot in the portal, but just that doesn't move the needle for me at all. It does the opposite. It makes me want to cringe just looking at who they're. I understand Billy Edwards is probably going to be their quarterback this year, which, don't get me wrong, he had some good spots last year for when Talia was out. But that's my number 3. Who is your number 3 disappointing team?
Miami. The Miami Hurricanes. Yeah, I know they got Carson Beck. Congratulations. You struggled last year. And why is their head coach's name escaping me at the moment? Anyway,
Cristobal. Mario Cristobal.
He might be on the hot seat mid-season too, because they brought him in there to win. They won this year, but Miami.
My number 2 is, and I'm sorry, I just hyped them up earlier, Colorado. Dion. You're losing both your kids, Shiloh and Shador, to the pros, and you're losing Travis Hunter. Who's your quarterback going to be next year? Is it going to be the five-star kid from high school, Juju Lewis? Or is it going to be somebody else? Because I think they did get a QB in the portal.
I
That's
think they did.
that's going to start this year over Julian. Well, they're going to probably have a QB battle. But I think the kid they got in the portal is probably going to start over the freshman. Who is your number 2 team?
Clemson Tigers.
We talked about Dabo a minute ago.
Yep.
My number 1, and I'm sorry to ruffle some feathers because I know some fans of this team. It is the Michigan Wolverines. And, Michigan fans, you need to pipe down. You're over here saying, "Oh, Ohio State spent $20 million on the transfer portal." No, we didn't. We spent $20 million to keep the players we had.
Mm-hmm.
Will Howard just happened to be in the portal, and we needed a quarterback because we ran Kyle McCord out of town,
Right.
which I don't agree with as an Ohio State fan. But that's neither here nor there because Kyle McCord's going to have a good career in the NFL. So is Will Howard. Judkins just happened to be in the portal, and he fell right into our lap. Same as Seth McLaughlin. And the second best defensive player from this year, behind Travis Hunter, Caleb Downs.
Okay.
So Michigan is my number 1 disappointing team because I think they might go 8-5 again, even though they have Bryce Underwood. And Michigan fans are being a little crazy thinking that Bryce Underwood's going to start as a freshman because they got Mikey Keene in the transfer portal, which I don't hate that move at all for them. I think Mikey Keene is a serviceable quarterback. He was at UCF. And that seems like a long time ago because it kind of is. That's when USF and UCF were playing each other every year.
Yeah.
Who's your number 1 disappointing team?
Penn State. Penn State. Yeah. Yeah. Again, you said you ruffled a lot of feathers with Michigan. I'm sure I'm going to ruffle a lot of feathers with Penn State. But yeah. Penn State.
Okay, now we get to our overachievers. My number 3, and they had a horrible season in the Big Ten last year. They fired Ryan Walters. They hired Barry Odom, which I give that an A+. Purdue. I absolutely am jumping for joy at the hire that Purdue made of Barry Odom. I think that year 1, they might win 6 or 7 games. Who is your number 3 overachiever?
The Navy midshipmen. I think they overachieved last year. I think this is the year that it continues for them. So it's Navy.
My number 2 overachiever is a team that I mentioned and teams to watch for 2025 because they also have a new head coach and Charles Huff. It is Southern Miss. I believe Charles Huff will lead Southern Miss to an 8 or 9 win season in year 1. Who is your number 1 overachieving team in 2025?
Tennessee Volunteers. I said this about Missouri last year, and I got that one wrong. So I'm hoping to get this one wrong too. So this one right this time. So I'm going to say Tennessee.
My number 1 team that's going to overachieve in 2025. And again, I rate their hire of Zach Kitley an A+, FAU. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment y'all have all been waiting for. Where will the college football podcast be going in 2026? Bradley, why don't you give them a little hint before I announce it?
I believe I know this. If I'm saying this right, it will be a rivalry game. I'll give that out. I'm not going to give it away, but you guys can figure out who that is.
Well, no, it's an early season game.
Okay.
This team is playing. You could say the team they're playing. It's a SEC team playing a Big Ten team. It is the College Football Podcast will be going to the Michigan Oklahoma football game September of 2026. So if you go to school in Ann Arbor or are a Michigan fan and you see us September of 2026 for the Michigan Oklahoma game, because they do play this year in Sooner Country in Oklahoma. But in 2026, if you see us, don't hesitate to stop and say hi and chat it up with us. The podcast will be streaming live from Ann Arbor, Michigan, September of 2026, week number 2. And we haven't talked about it yet, but we are going to some video ideas for that week when we are in Ann Arbor. We will keep everybody updated. I know I'm excited. I don't know about Bradley.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I've never been to Ann Arbor, but
Neither
I've
have I.
heard, and I dog on their I'm sorry, Michigan fans. I dog on the big house, but I might have to take everything back that I've said about the big house. Going there in 2026. And I'm going to say the other reason I'm going is I lost a bet with a high school friend of mine. And he probably doesn't remember making the bet with me. Adam Roberts. I lost the bet with you that I said Ohio State was going to beat Michigan this year. And unfortunately, they didn't. And the kicker of the bet was if Ohio State lost to Michigan, I had to go to a Michigan game. And I'm going to follow through on that. And 2026, going to Michigan, Oklahoma with my co-host, Bradley. And again, we are part of the NGSC Sports Network, ngscsports.com. You know the website. And that was our big announcement. We will have more announcements to follow when the date gets closer of our exact date of arrival to Ann Arbor and where we will be streaming live from. But for Alec and Bradley and the College Football Podcast, for the last episode of the 2024 season, we are signing off. College Football Podcast will return in August. Well, no, late July.
Mm-hmm.
We will return with more episodes of the College Football Podcast late July. But you can catch all our other podcasts, the 9 Innings Podcast and the Wrestling is Awesome Podcast, which we will have a new Wrestling is Awesome podcast next Tuesday. And next Wednesday night, we'll be doing a watch along of AEW Dynamite, with the following day doing a recap of AEW Dynamite. But for Alec and Bradley, we are signing off. We will see y'all next Tuesday night at 5:45.